I've made this project day 4 and added the jar files in it, and this was the last piece of code which we had written. Okay, where I was launching the driver dynamically, and I was going to the website, and I was getting the title of the website. Right now, the thing is, after reaching a website, you need to identify the elements on the web page. Okay, and it's quite simple. The thing is, Selenium works on the page source of the web page. Okay, now what do you mean by the page source? So every website, it has a certain HTML code. Okay, for example, you go to any site. Okay, it will have a page source, right? For example, you go to, hold on, you go to our website only, qtpselenium.com, and just let it load. Yeah, so if you even go to our website, qtpselenium.com, you can actually right click on the web page and you will get the option view page source. Fine. So you can view the page source. This is the HTML page source. It's got some tags, and like this is known as the tag. Div is a tag. Whatever starts with a conical bracket is a tag. Okay. With the tag, there are attributes, like this tag has got one attribute class. There can be a tag which has got no attributes as well. Okay, so a tag can have zero or many attributes, and with the help of this tags and attributes, we identify the elements. Okay, and it's not like that we inspect the page like this. Okay, instead of going to the page source, what you can do is you can right click on any element. Right, say I right click on this link, top trending topics. So if I right click on it, I'll get the option inspect. You select that and you will have, this is known as the Chrome inspector. Okay, there is a small arrow over here on the top left side. If you click on it, and if you move your mouse over the elements, say I move the mouse over this link, UFT training. Okay, click on it. The HTML code corresponding to UFT training would be highlighted. So UFT training text is inside a span tag. The span tag opens over here, closes over here. Okay. You can also switch the view. You can switch to the dock to bottom view, which is this one. Generally, we work in this view, wherein the page source is at the bottom. Right. So you just need to, you know, click on this arrow and move the mouse over the text and or whatever element it is. Right. So this is how you inspect the web page. Similarly, in Firefox and Edge, you have got inspectors. Right. For example, in Firefox or Edge, uh, if you hold on, this is hanging. Okay, let it be for some time. Right. So similarly in Firefox or Edge also, when you right click, you get the option inspect. You can inspect the page source over there. Okay. The thing is that you know the page source remains same across all the browsers. Okay, it is not that in Firefox you will get some other page source, or in Chrome you will get some other page source. That is not the thing. Page source is actually the response from the server. Okay, it is the server response. Fine. So it remains same across all the browsers. So if you inspect an element, say for example, I'll just take a simple thing. I'll go to the contact us form. where I will inspect the name field, right? So this name field would have an ID or a name. This has an ID. Okay, this has got a name attribute, a type attribute. This is the tag name input. The HTML code of this name field is this particular line. This will remain same in different browsers as well. So it's not that you have to investigate on different browsers. Generally I prefer to investigate the web page on Chrome, and then you can apply it on any browser, right? Because in Firefox or in other websites also, I will be getting the same attributes. Okay, now anyways, let us see how the attributes they work. Okay, and I'll just hold on. I'll just make a sheet over here known as tags and attributes. Okay, whether it is Firefox or whether it is Chrome, all right, you will always get, in case of Firefox also, you can actually hold on, this is changing. You can right click on the web page and say inspect element, fine, and I don't know what happened. This is refreshing, the page itself is refreshing in some time. Okay, you can right click inspect, you'll get a similar kind of a console, and you can click on the arrow and move the mouse over the elements. Okay, and you will get the HTML page source, but generally I don't prefer Firefox to do it. Chrome is much simpler and smoother. Right, now let's make a simple chart to understand the HTML for different elements on the web page. This will help us in future as well. Fine. So generally, what are the types of elements there are on the web page? Every element would have a certain tag name. I'm sorry, guys. This somebody. Just hold on, guys. There's someone who's unable to join the training. Okay, give me a minute. Let me help him out. Okay, just hold on. I'll give him the link. Just hold on. Just a minute, guys. There's someone who's unable to join the training. Okay, let's start. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so this there are different elements on the web page. Every element has a certain tag name. Okay, what do you mean by a tag name? By saying that every element has a particular tag name, I mean that, say for example, this is the name field. Okay, it's got input type over here, and this is the particular tag name, form is a tag name, div is a tag name. So every element has a particular tag name. Fine. And every element has got some mandatory attributes which will always be there, and some optional attributes. Okay, so what do you mean by this mandatory attributes, optional attributes? Look, every element has got certain attributes. For example, this is the form tag. It's got one attribute class, one attribute action, right? So let's discuss in detail about the different elements and their tags and the attributes, right? For example, you have got a simple text box on the web page in which you can type, or you have a button or a checkbox or a radio button on the web page. Okay, what else you have? You have got say links on the web page. You have got a select box on a web page, right? And you have got regular text, the normal text which you write. Okay, you have got images. So generally these are the elements which are visible to us and we interact with them. Okay, so if you look at this text field over here, say the name text field, fine. This name text field, a text field will always have the tag name input. Okay, the tag name for a text field will always be input tag. All right. In case of a button, suppose this is the submit query button. If I move my mouse over this is the button. Fine. The button tags opens here, closes here. This is the text of the button. Okay, if I change the text and if I just print my name, see my name will come up in the page as well. Okay, so this everything is loaded from the HTML page onto what we see. All right. So this is the button, the type is submit and class is this. The button tag has got the tag name input, and at times the tag name is also input or the button. At times you will see that button will always can also have the tag name input. Okay, in case of a radio button or a checkbox, that's not there over here. Hold on. If I go to Facebook and okay, they have also removed, right? Hold on. So I'll just type HTML radio button, right? Or you go to the website zoho.com. They had a radio button or checkbox, right? You go to free sign up web page, and this is a small checkbox over here. Okay, this is okay, this is actually HTML. It's not actually a checkbox. Hold on. HTML checkbox. Actually, from Facebook they removed it. So if you look at the HTML checkbox, fine, it looks something like this, right? And over here, if you inspect this checkbox, or even if you inspect the radio button, right? This is a checkbox. If I inspect it, then you will see the tag name is input. For input, input is the tag name for the checkbox as well. Okay. And if you investigate any radio button, the tag name for radio button is also input. So input can be with text box, button, checkbox, radio button, the tag name, but there are few mandatory attributes. Okay, there are few mandatory attributes which are different. For example, when you have an input tag with checkbox, there is a type attribute which will always be there. Okay, the type attribute, the value would be checkbox. If the input tag has type checkbox, it becomes a checkbox. In case of a radio button, the type becomes a radio. In case of a text box, the type becomes text. Okay, if I just go to say QTP Selenium only and go to the contact us page. So over here, if you look at this particular text box, the type is text. Okay, so this will always be there with the checkbox, sorry, with the text box. And in case of a button, if the tag name is input, then the type becomes button or submit. Sometimes it is also submit. Okay. So these are the tag names of these elements, and these are the mandatory attributes. In case of a link, the tag name is a anchor tag. Most of you must be knowing about it. Okay, say if we have this particular link over here, PostgreSQL, right? It is inside, somewhere inside the anchor tag. Okay, let me just take a very plain link. For example, learning Spring tutorial. This is the one. This is an anchor tag A. href is a mandatory attribute in case of a link which stores the URL which will open when you click on the link. So in case of a link, the link text is, this is the link text between the anchor tags. The anchor tag opens over here, closes over here, and this is the text. This is the href mandatory attribute which holds the URL. When you click on the link, it will load this particular URL. Fine. So I'll put it over here. In case of a link, the tag name is a, mandatory attribute is href. In case of a select box, okay, if you look at a select box, say this is the country select box. In case of a select box, the tag name is select. Okay, and there is no mandatory attribute, only the tag name is select. Fine. And then we have the text. The normal text on the web page, it has got no specific tag. Sometimes it is in the para tag known as p, sometimes div, sometimes span. There are no specific tags for the text. Okay, for the images on the website, okay, if there is some image like this is an image, the image starts with img tag, and the source attribute holds the URL from where the image will be loaded. See, if I copy this URL and if I paste it over here, see the image is loading from this URL. Okay, so the image has got mandatory attribute img and an sorry, the tag name img, and mandatory attribute as source, which means the place from which the image will be loaded. And there are few optional attributes. They can be there or they might not be there with the elements, and these are generally id, name, class. Okay, id, name and class can be there with any element. It is up to the developer, up to the will and the decision of the developer whether to give these attributes with the elements or not. Let's first talk about id and name. If an element has got id or name, for example this element over here.
Ashish, one question. What's the use of mandatory attribute? Is it meaning like we should compulsory use those attributes to identify an element?
Sometimes we use, very rarely. But if I try to identify this element with the mandatory attribute, say text, then I cannot identify it because there are many elements. There are, say, name, email, and contact number. All of them would be having type as text. But every element would be having the optional attribute is having optional attribute ID, which is unique. Okay, the value of ID for name is something else. For email, it is something else. So, although the mandatory attribute is always present, but the type value would be same for all of them. So, over here, the ID helps us. Each text field over here would have a different ID, or there is an attribute known as a name as well. The name attribute is email. So if an element is having name and name or ID, then that is supposed to be unique. Okay, there can be two elements on a web page which have got same ID or same name, but that's very rare. Okay, that should not happen. All right, but if
Okay.
that is happening, um, then there are ways to fix that I'll talk later on. But generally, ID or name are unique. So the ID and name can be there with any element. All right. Not all the elements have got IDs or names. Like for example, um, I look at this say next button over here. This is the next button. It's an anchor tag. This has got no ID. However, this is inside an element which has an ID, but this itself is not having any ID. Okay, not developer never gives ID to every element or a name to every element. But if it is there, then it becomes very easy to identify the element. If it is not there, then there are other ways to identify the elements, which I will tell you later on. But the first step is ID or name. Having ID or name for an element becomes a very good thing, right? Sometimes elements also have an attribute known as class. Okay, like for example, you have this anchor tag whose class is next. Okay, now this class is never unique. Please remember this. The class attribute is never unique. Generally, elements which have the same look and feel on a web page have the same class. Like these are the two buttons, previous and next. The look and feel of both the buttons is same. It's green in color. The text, type, font, size, everything is same. So this class is actually the CSS class. It is the value is next. Okay, and see both the links previous and next. Okay, these are both the links in the source. Both of them have the same class. All right, if you move this upwards and if you scroll it like this, right, this is the, you can say, the CSS style sheet for this particular element. You don't need to go into this, but this is something which gives element a look and feel. Say if I uncheck these options, see the button will, the look and feel of the button will change. This is used by the developers. You don't need this, but majorly you will need this thing. And understand the class is something which is not unique. Like for example, if I go to um, say Amazon.in. Okay, and I search for phone. So you have got these three items listed over here. Every item has got certain price, but the look and feel of the price is same. Okay, if I go and identify this price, it's got price as a hyphen price hyphen whole. Okay, if I look at this element, this has also got the same price. And if I look at this element, this has also got the same price. So not the same price, it's the same class. So class is something which gives look and feel to the element. Okay, it's a CSS class actually internally, right? When the developer is writing the code, he defines this class and tells that fine, this class will have this much font, this. So multiple elements can have the same class. So it's not unique, but yes, at times we use class also to identify the element. Okay. Generally, if the element has got ID or a name, it really becomes easy to identify it. Now let's write some code to identify the elements and extract the elements. Right. Let's write a simple script wherein I will use this particular file only, and we will go to the website, say Zoho. Let's try to log in into zoho.com. Right. So this is the email ID field. If you inspect the field, okay, this is the URL. So first of all, you go to this particular URL, print the title of the web page, right? Then you look at this text field. Okay, so it is an input tag whose ID is login ID, right? So we have an ID. So if it is having an ID, if an element has an ID or it has also got a name, it has also got a class, but I don't prefer to use a class, and there are many other attributes. Okay, so if I look at ID, let's start with ID, then I can give a simple command, and many of you must have heard about it. Driver dot find element. Okay, this command, what it does is that it will go and find a web element. Web element, okay, web element. Every element on a web page is known as web element in Selenium. Okay, web element means a generic element on the web page. Okay, it can be a button, it can be a link, it can be anything. Okay, and find element by which criteria? How do you find the element? All right, that is defined by a class known as by. Okay, by class defines the element type. Okay, so like by which criteria you need to find the element. Okay, so you write over here by dot, right? That is, you want to find the element by the ID, by the link text, by the name, by the CSS selector, class name. There are different criterias. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 criterias. Selenium works with these 8 criterias to find elements on the web page. The easiest of them are ID, name, link text. Okay, so if you, obviously I don't need to explain you about link text. It is directly the text of the link which you can paste, right? So if I write by the ID, and you can specify the ID over here from the page source. What it does, this command, it will find the element and it will return you object reference of web element. Web element is technically an interface inside Selenium. Okay, and The web element interface holds functions and methods which are common to identify the elements of a web page. Okay, or to interact with them after finding, if you have to interact with the web element. For example, if I write username dot, you will get a lot of commands like get location dot x. This will give you the x coordinate of the username field. All right. And if I write get location dot y, this will give you y coordinate. Right. If I write username dot, say, there are commands like click. Had it been a link, I could have clicked on it as well using the click command. Okay, there are many attributes, okay, or the functions. Like if you have to type something, the function is send keys. Right, I can type hello. So get location dot x will give you x coordinate, dot y will give you y coordinate. 0 0 is top left corner of the screen. This is 0 0. Okay, x coordinate increases towards the right side, y coordinate increases towards the bottom. It does not decrease, it increases. It's the reverse axis over here. Okay, it's on the top left side, 0 0 is there. Okay, so if you run this, see, this will launch Chrome, take you to Zoho and type in hello. Right. So everything, all the commands are inbuilt. You just need to understand how they are built. Okay, this is the next button. Right. The ID is next button. Fine. And or I can take the attribute. Okay, it's got an ID. Fine. Had it been name, I could have used name. I write over here web element button equals to driver dot find element by the ID this, and then I can write button dot click. But generally what happens is that, look, to identify what I am doing is I'm using two lines. First line is identifying the element, second line is interacting with the element. I can write this thing in one line only. Okay, I can directly write like this. Driver dot find element. The execution starts from the left side. First, this is executed, the web element is identified, and then on that click is performed. So it's better to write one line. And moreover, look, I had been using Chrome and the same script. If I run on Mozilla, I just need to change the browser name here, and the same script is going to run on Mozilla as well. Okay, so every command in Selenium is inbuilt. You just need to understand the commands, few principles of object-oriented programming, and you are done with Selenium. You can understand that. Okay, but guys, writing script is not a tough thing. You might not be able to write it today. You might be struggling with writing scripts today, but gradually you will understand how to write, because it's all about writing driver.find element commands and other stuff. Okay, but the most important thing is, you know, it's not building scripts. See, it clicked on the next button. Fine. It is the most important thing is not actually writing these lines of codes. Suppose I give you 50 such scripts to write, 50, and I want that reports should be generated. I want that when every script runs, logs should be coming up, screenshots should be coming up, right? And I should be able to selectively run the scripts. If there are 50 such scripts, I just want to run 20 of them. How do I do that? There should be reusability of the code. This type of code to launch the browser I am writing over here. If I have 50 scripts, then will I just copy paste the same code everywhere? No, we won't do that. We will keep it in a function. Right. So things like these are important things. These are challenging things. Okay, anybody can go to internet. You don't need a training. There are lots of stuff available. Okay, you can easily read about these commands and you must be knowing about these commands, right? Many of you. Okay, but writing these commands is not a challenge. The challenge is somewhere else. Okay, I will come over to that as well. And moreover, you know, this thing, what I've written, driver dot find element. One more thing, if what if there is an element, there are two elements on the web page, okay, with the same ID, right? This is the ID next button, right? What if there are two elements on this web page which have the same ID? What's going to happen? Look, driver dot find element command finds the first element. Okay, the web page, this is the web page. When it is scanned by Selenium, when Selenium goes and, hold on, scans the web page, it moves from left to right side and goes at the bottom. So if there are two elements on the web page, one is here and other one is here, which have the same ID, then Selenium will use the first one, it will not use the second one. Although two elements should not be having same ID, but if they are having, then this happens. If you want to use the second one, there are ways to do that as well, and I'm going to tell you that. But by default, driver.find element finds the first element on the web page. Okay, the first element with the ID. All right. Now, before I move forward and I tell you about more WebDriver commands, look, there is something you need to understand in Java. That is, the concept of constructors. Why am I teaching you constructors in Java? Look, you are launching the browsers over here, right? If I'm launching the Chrome browser and if I run this code, you will see that the Chrome browser, it is not launching in a maximized state. Generally, when we run the scripts, we want our browsers to open in a maximized state. So there are few settings in browser. Basically, the requirement is there are few browser configurations with which we need to launch the browsers. Okay, they can be like, say, the browser should be maximized. Sometimes when you open a website, uh, you know, it presents you with a message on the top, okay, notification that, this website wants to send you a notification, allow or block. Many of you must have seen that. Okay, it is something like that. There are push notifications. Like if it comes something like this, right? You cannot handle this window with Selenium. There is no Selenium command to manage this window. This block or allow button will not have an XPath or an ID. You cannot right click on it. So you have to make sure that the notifications are blocked. You don't need those notifications when you are running your scripts, right? And at times you have got, you know security exceptions or SSL exceptions coming up. At times you must have gone to a website and that website would have given you a message that this site is not secure. Okay, SSL error, badssl.com. So it comes up something like this. So you have to click on advanced, and you have to click on that, proceed to this website. That's okay, I want to proceed if the certificate has expired, right? So the website opens up finally. So you have got these kinds of exceptions as well when you're launching the browsers, right? And there are many other configurations. Sometimes your company works on proxy, and you want that whichever browser you open should be working on a proxy, through a proxy, right? Generally what we do, like in Firefox, we do the proxy settings. You can go to say tools, options, and you can search for proxy, and you manually set the proxy over here, that fine, I want to use this, otherwise there is no proxy, right? So how do we launch a browser with certain proxy settings, because many projects require that. So to understand this, you need to understand the concept of constructors in Java first, right? So after, once you launch the browsers, you can identify the elements, but you have to launch the browsers with few settings. I'm going to talk about that now, right? Then we will move forward with the identification. Okay, now let's talk about constructor. It's a very important concept. I'll just make a simple class known as constructor, right? Suppose in this class I also make a class known as a very simple, like uh, car class, right? And I will create the object of car over here. You can have multiple classes in a class as well. The class with the main function should be public. Public means that it can be accessed from anywhere. There is no restriction. So over here I'm creating the object of the car class. Now suppose car has got a variable, say the price and the name of the car, the company of the car, right? So suppose these are the three major variables in the car class. So I will have to initialize them. Okay, I will have to write a c1 dot price is 100, c1 dot name is uh, a, c1 dot company is company 1. Just giving you an example, right? So obviously I have initialized the object of this car class, but the problem is not initializing the object. The problem is, what if I am making another 4 objects of the car class? I will have to write 3 lines each. That means total 12 lines to initialize 4 objects. And what if this car has got 20 properties? Name, height, capacity, engine capacity, or whatever it is. Then every object will be initialized with 20 such lines. So if I'm making one object, 20 lines. If I'm making 10 objects, 200 lines. And it becomes a problem. Okay. So over here, the constructors, they help us. Constructor is something which helps us to initialize the object very easily. Okay, nothing else. It is basically to initialize the object of the class. First of all, you have a constructor known as default constructor. This is the default constructor. The name of the constructor should be same as the name of the class. This is the first rule. The second rule for making a constructor is that there should be no return type. If I make a function public void calculate, then generally a function in a class has a return type, like void means nothing, int means it will return an integer, right? So if I make the car class constructor, then the constructor has got no return type. It will only initialize the object. If I just write over here, this is known as default constructor, but no arguments, right? If I run this code, see, it is printing inside default constructor 4 times. Whenever you create the object of the class, okay, suppose I don't write anything, I just write over here new car. I've created one object, okay, or I just write new car. I've created two objects over here. The second object has got no object reference. So if I run this will be called 2 times, right? So the default constructor is something which is, if it is not there, it is hidden. Okay, I run this, it will run fine, it will print nothing. But if you want to bring it, you can bring it as well. All right, so it is optional to write, but I can also have different form of constructor, that is public car, and this constructor takes 3 parameters: int price, name, and company. So I can have a different form of this constructor, and I can write price equals to P, name equals to N, and the company equals to C. Right. So when I create the object of the car class now, I can send the price, name, and the company. So this constructor would be called in this particular case. And the initialization of the constructor would happen, the initialization of the object, sorry, would happen inside the constructor itself. The price would be equated to P, name, and the company. All three variables would get the values. And if I run over here, I write C2 dot name or C2 dot price, right? So this would print the name, price, or even if you want to print the company for C2. So it is very easy now. I can have as many objects, C3, C4, C5, and I can initialize every object differently with different values. Okay. So I don't need to write after creating the object. I don't need to write this dot price is this dot this is this. So you send the variables inside the constructor, right? And they will get initialized. This is known as constructor overloading. Overloading means that one name but different input parameters. This name is same. If we have a function like I have a calculate function, I send two variables in it. It's a theoretical concept. Okay. Generally, you can be asked in an interview. I can make the calculate function again. If I send two parameters, it will throw me an error. If I add three, it won't. But the calculate function, the name remains same. and the number of input parameters, they are differing. Okay, so if the number of input parameters, if they differ, the concept is known as overloading. You overload it and you have the same name, different parameters. Similarly, the constructor is over, we technically we call it, this is overloading. All right.
So Ashish, the calculate function, what you have written, that is function overloading, right?
Yeah, function overloading, yes. This can be known as constructor overloading.
Okay.
Okay. But it's just a technical concept. The basic thing is that one function or uh, constructor can be there with different input parameters. This is the major concept. Now, if I write over here the variables price, name, company, if I keep three variables over here and I write price equals to price, name equals to name, company equals to company. So there are few rules which you need to understand for constructors. If the name of the variable, this is the local variable which has the name same as the global variable. The names I have kept same, company. So if I just run this and print the value of c2.name and price, this will print null and zero. These global variables are not initialized. The default value of string is null and default value of integer is zero. So they are not initialized. I'm actually writing price equals to price means the local variable price is equal to the local variable price. This variable hides this particular variable if the name is same. So I want the global variable price to be there on the left hand side equated to the local variable price which is there on the right hand side. So we write the variable, we use the variable this over here if the names are same. This dot price means the price of the current object which is being initialized because constructor helps us to initialize the object. This always represents the current object. So the price of the current object, basically the global variable price, is equal to the local variable price. Okay, similarly for name and company. So when you run this, it gives you the right output. Okay, so this is about constructors, right? You can overload them, anything you can do. All right. And we will be using constructors for Firefox driver, Chrome driver, Edge driver. Okay, we will be using the overloaded constructors in order to achieve, these goals which I have told you. All right. Gradually, I'm going to tell you about these as well. Okay, just be with me. Right now, just understand there are some things, there is something known as constructor. Okay, and it helps you to initialize the object, right, in Java. Okay, and I have this thing, the quiz, solve this one, basics of Selenium. This has got constructors in it as well. Okay, this is the URL. Just try to solve them. Look guys, whatever exercises I am giving you, these are very important. Okay, generally what happens is, you come to the class, you learn, and you think that fine, you know the topic, but when you actually solve the exercises, that is what actually opens your eyes. And there are many questions in these exercise, I'll tell you. which are like, after every class, I'll be giving you the exercises, right? So there are many questions in the exercises. Hold on. Which are like, what will be the output of following? I have deliberately given an image over here so that you don't copy paste the code in Eclipse. Rather, you can try to make the code in Eclipse yourself, but try to guess the output first with a certain logic. Okay, and then uh, you know uh, write the code in Eclipse. This is not a test. I am not evaluating anything. Okay, I don't see the score of anyone. I don't compare. Okay, although this looks like a test because this website has got the option to make a test. Okay, I never had that option. But this is not a test I'm giving you. This is for your extended knowledge. When you do these exercises, hardly 10, 12 questions, they will give you a very broad, understanding of what the concept is. And in the end, I have also given few Selenium exercises that, what write a script to do this. There are 4 examples over here which you need to do. So we will be discussing these exercises every Saturday. I'm going to discuss these. You will get a very good insight into Java and Selenium. And it's not just for Java Selenium. In interviews also, it will help you because these are the kind of questions you can be asked over there. So this is not a test. This is for your broader understanding. When you submit it, you are going to get the correct answers and the description as well, that what is the actual output. Okay, if you don't get it, you can write the code in Eclipse. Give 1 hour to this, 1.5 hours to every exercise. Don't think that fine, I'll do it on the weekend and things will get piled up. You will never be able to learn this way. Okay, so we will meet tomorrow. All right, and we'll see about identification of objects, XPath, exception handling. We'll do and the notifications and all which I have talked now. I'll tell you. Okay, right. So anyone with any questions? Anything? Anyone? Anything?
Ashish, I have a question. I was trying to create some scripts, some basic scripts, and I'm always getting into module instead of packages, and I'm missing a default package in Selenium. So maybe this is a basic question, but I'm a beginner here.
You have to be in Java perspective.
Okay.
Okay. You click on this open perspective icon
Okay.
and make sure you are selecting Java over here, Java default.
Okay.
Otherwise, the view becomes very different.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. Anyone else with any questions?
One more question, Ashish.
Yeah.
The exercises what you give in the last classes, right? When I'm trying to execute, sometimes it is calling some other like default um, jar files or something. It some of the jar files. So when I'm doing that breakpoint step by step, so somewhere I'm getting stuck. Like not like when I'm doing that step by step execution.
Hmm. The control
So
is going inside that white screen and that thing comes up. The jar file code is
yeah,
opening up.
the jar file is opening and it
If
is
you hit
like keep on
F5 of the
moving.
keyboard by mistake, that will happen.
Which one?
F5. If you have to hit F6. If by
Oh,
mistake, if
okay.
you hit F5, that happens.
Oh, okay, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ashish, as you shown how to download the Chrome driver for our browser launch process, I just tried to download the Firefox driver from the selenium.dev, but I couldn't find it there. So, is there
It is
any other?
not on selenium.dev. Okay, selenium.dev just tells you where it is lying. You have to Like if I go to selenium.dev, if I go to the downloads, Firefox, go to Firefox, go to Gecko driver releases. This is the link. This is the link I've given you on chat.
Okay, thank you.
So you can scroll down and download for your OS. Okay. Right then, I'll mail you the recordings and invite for tomorrow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.